Okay.
Sounds good to us.
That's great.
Awesome. So we, Andrea and I took a look at your email, and we're just going to kind of go through that circulation workflow and the cataloging, and then the OPAC.
Excellent.
Through the 2 hours. So.
Yeah, this is very, as I've explained throughout, this is very sort of cursory, and this is just sort of a taste of your product. It's nothing too in depth. So, yeah, that's wonderful. Good morning, folks. We'll start in a minute or so. People can filter in as they filter in. It's all being recorded. So Andrea and Jim, where are you based out of?
I'm in Minneapolis.
Oh.
So not too far away.
Local person, yeah, absolutely.
I'm in the southwest part of Missouri, Springfield.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, it's been a little busy up here in Wisconsin lately. Milwaukee's out to bid, so we're dealing with that.
You got your work cut out for you.
Yeah.
All right, it is 9 o'clock. I think we will start this up. People can filter in as they filter in. Good morning. Today we have 2 demos, one at 9, one at 1. The 9 o'clock demo here is for SirsiDynix, a product called Symphony. And yeah, with that, I yield the floor. Good morning, Jim and Andrea. And yeah, let us have it. Let's hear about your product.
All right. Well, my name is Jim Schwieters. I'm the regional or sales director here for the Western U.S. Wisconsin is included in that. So I've been with the company for 14 years, and we're going to just kind of run through a couple of hours today of some general stuff on Symphony. And Andrea, my demo person today, will give her introduction, and then she'll take it away.
Yeah. So I'm what they call a pre-sales consultant. Basically, I need to know a lot about all of the products we offer customers. And so I have been here a little bit longer than Jim, 18 years, but we've worked together a long time. So we kind of know, we anticipate your questions. We encourage those questions along the way. And I will probably pause once in a while, see if there are any. And I will get started with sharing because we don't have that much time. Let me see. I always struggle to figure out with Teams which one I want to share. So I'll go with this one. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is I will give you just a quick introduction about when you log in, what happens, and then we'll dive into the cataloging part of the discussion. We'll morph into the circulation, and then I'll show you at the very end a little bit of the catalog that's for patrons, so the OPAC. When you log into workflows, it's really roles and permissions that are working behind the scenes to tell the system exactly what you should be seeing. And it should be something that's very specific to your job. So if you're technical services, you might have something that just brings together every tool that you need and then leave all those other things that you may not need. So there's this particular login I've accessed here is for an admin that's going to do everything pretty much throughout the day. But if I'm a circulation person, my login may look completely different. I may only have a few tools for the circulation tasks that I do and maybe some reports that I have to access for whatever reason. And then that's going to be it. So you see the difference between the two is based on that login. How I log in determines what I see and what I can do, and then also the behaviors of what I can do as well. So that's all wrapped up into that login. All right, so having discussed that, and administrators have complete control over how to create those logins and what kind of tools should be within those module toolbars. So if you notice, this is a delivered right out of the box circulation toolbar. It has a lot of buttons. that probably a lot of people don't even need to use. So as you saw with my Circ login, I can create a nice compact toolbar with everything that I need. And I can include the map to the function keys so that when I press the F4 function key, that window is going to pop open for me. And I can label those so I don't have to try to remember them, or, put a slip of paper. We used to have in my library a little kind of lanyard or a board above the F function keys to remind us what we click on does this. All right, so that's just a synopsis of this. So we'll get into the cataloging part first, and I'll go to the cataloging toolbar. And again, you can remove anything that you don't need or add some things that you do. So what some libraries will do is catalogers will have to do a little bit of circulation functions. So they'll just bring those two things together under one place, and then you don't have to move around from toolbar to toolbar. So this is just to give you an example of how the catalog is set up. We're going to do a search first. I think that lays the foundation for the next things that I show in creating copies or adding things to a bibliographic record. So the item search and display, this is located on every toolbar. It doesn't matter if you're doing a report or if you're doing circulation. This catalog search is omnipresent. And it's there so you can access it at any time in any situation. And what you'll notice is that within this search screen, there's a couple of different things going on here. One of them is the last title I worked with is going to be the current in a hyperlink. That means whatever title I viewed just recently, or maybe a title I checked out to a patron, it shows up as the current. Now, on top of that, there are different indexes to use. These are the ones that are delivered, and then a couple of extra bonus ones that we created on the just after the fact. Call it, I always compare it to motorcycles, an aftermarket feature, right? So you added it after you bought that. ISBN, ISSN, we don't technically deliver those right out of the box, but that's something that you could enable if you wanted to. You have the ability to create additional indexes. The other thing to note too is that we're doing with those indexes a keyword search initially. That's what it defaults to. Although some librarians and library staff like to have a browse option, and that will be another selection that you can choose if you would prefer. And I'm going to show the difference between the two. You'll see a distinct difference in that. So let me take you through the example. I used to be a trainer for the first 8 years that I worked here. So I always had an introduction class that I would take people through. It's called Essential Skills, and we would walk through this search experience so that you kind of better understand how the system is set up when you do a search. And the title search I always start with, and I told them to use a very simple kind of all around word, brown. And we looked at the results based on the fact we typed in the keyword brown, and it's in the title. So you would expect to see the word brown in every single one of these titles, which in fact, in this case, you do. You see that down the way, the word brown is in every instance of that bibliographic record there for the title. So then what we would do is we would use the index and switch over to author. We would redo the search, and I would have people look for the word brown in the author field. And what happened, of course, inevitably, is that they would look through this and they would see, well, some of these don't have the main author is Brown. So I'd ask them to go through the bibliographic record, and I would say, now go through this record and try to find why Brown is being pulled as a result for that particular title. And most of the time, catalogers who deal with MARC records all the time, they would know it's an added author. So this is a motion picture, meaning a DVD, and it has, of course, a cast list. And the cast list includes Ralph Brown. That is something that's important for frontline circulation staff and reference people, information people to know, because what if you have a patron that comes up and says, I really like a particular narrator. He's got a great deep British voice, and I really like everything that he reads. Could you find him for me, all of the audiobooks that you have? Well, you can do that because a narrator is an added author. So you can type in, for instance, Graham Malcolm as the narrator of some of the MC Beaton books and some other things that he's done and get a list for that person. So you can easily do that using that author field. So that's what I mean by we create these indexes and try to help you with finding the things that you need in order for you to help the patrons as well. So the last thing I would have people do is switch it to a general search and redo the search, hitting the enter key. And you'll notice that, let me just step back here. This has a little previous search results, so you can step back and see the author search I just did. It's almost 3,000 in results for the author using the word Brown, but using the general search, it's almost 8,000. It really expanded and broadened there. And the reason for that is, of course, you can see the word Brown in the author. Sometimes it's in the title, but when it's in neither, then you have to start to wonder, well, why has this been selected for the results? And what people will see is that there might be the word Brown in the summary. There could be the word Brown in the publisher. So if you think about this, in fair warning here, we've got little Brown and company. That's what happens with a general search. You've broadened it so wide that it will search for the word Brown in every MARC tag in every MARC record of the system. So that's how general it can be. But the general search can also be very focused as well. So for those of you that know MARC records pretty well, you could search for a particular Lexile score using a 521. That happens to be an audience. And I think it'll be 6. Let's do that. That's probably something. I don't know if that's even in my system, but I can certainly search for it to see. Okay, I did find some things that are 690 in the Lexile, and you can see it right here. So I happen to know, and of course the question, we had a demo yesterday, Jim and I, and the question came up and they said, well, what if you don't know those particular MARC tags? Like, what if you don't know that a 505, if I wanted to find all of those CDs that have the wedding march in it, what if I don't know that the 505 is the content notes? And it will find me all of those CDs with the wedding song in it, the wedding march. Well, if you don't know those tags, what you can do is you can use a search option to say that you would prefer to search for those that particular title in a music CD. So these search options will help you to search certain parts of the collections, like audiovisual or maybe the fiction collection. It will also help you in searching for particular reading levels too. So if you wanted to type a search term for a subject heading, but you wanted only juvenile results, you can use these search terms to help you with that. So if you notice now, I've omitted that 505 note field, and I still have all the results. In fact, I have better ones because the wedding march appeared in a couple of items that were not music CDs. So you can see all of these will have the that wedding march in it. And if I go over to my my subject notes here, you'll see that there is within that group. It's kind of the second row there toward the end. Wedding march is one of those that has been contained within that CD. So that's how this works. I'll pause here. That was a lot of searching information. Did you have any questions that came up with that, all of that? All right. I typed silence as a no. So let me just show you quickly the difference between the keyword and the browse. So with the browse, I don't have to know all of the term. I don't have to know how to spell it particularly. I always talk about Tchaikovsky, which is very different spelling from place to place. So if you want to do an author browse, you can type in part of the name. And when you do that search, it will most likely push you into a C reference. So that's what this is with the red arrow, is it's pointing you to a different reference, which happens to be this one right here. So you can scroll through this list and you can kind of see with the green check marks, those are the authorized headings, and clicking on that will then provide a list of all of the works that were have the author of Tchaikovsky in there. You don't have to know how to spell. Solzhenitsyn is another one. I can never remember how to spell that. So I just type in a little bit of what I know and I find the result list You can do this with patrons as well. You can actually browse for patron names just in case you don't quite understand what they're saying. You might be able to type in a few letters and get to their information a little bit better with a browse. So we've got browses put throughout the system, whether it's searching for materials or for patrons as well. I think the only other thing that I wanted to do is just switch this to a subject really quickly. And instead of putting in part of a term, what I'll do is I'll put in a subject term. And it looks like earthquakes is not quite what I'm looking for. So you'll notice as well, the authorities are working to help you as staff find what you're supposed to, anything the patron needs. You need to be able to have maybe a broader understanding of that term or narrower. So all of these here are searching for broader or narrower terms, and it lets you know that. Or it lets you know a see also reference as well. So when you click on those, you actually will get to different results. And it might be that there's some things that are in there, some things may not be, but I don't have any subjects, titles with subjects of seismology, definitely not of Argentina in there. But that's kind of how that would work, is for you to go around and click on things. Okay, so again, asking if there are any questions before I show you how we can actually add copies to these titles that we've been looking at just recently. I'll do this one too. I need to, let me go back. Oh, I accidentally clicked on the advanced search. That's great, because I'll do this so you can see. The advanced search gives me the Boolean options, which are great. They're built in. And all I did to do that, you didn't see how I did that, but I accidentally clicked this icon right here, which is the advanced search. And you can configure this advanced search to have all of those things that you would like to have in the windows here as far as indexes. But just searching the hours, by the way, that will provide quite a list. And I should remove my music CD from the, and that's a good learning moment right there. If you want to have all the results, it retains that other selection I made earlier. So it has 126 results for the word hours. And if I'm looking for the Michael Cunningham book or the movie about his book, I probably want to do a more specific search. So I can do this and it will find all 5 records of the Michael Cunningham work. Just so that you know, what you could have done as well is you could have done a general search, and you could have done hours and Cunningham and done a general search like that, and you would have found the results. Oh, it went back to subject. I think I was at browse, wasn't I? Oh, I need keyword, yes. Oh, and I didn't hit general again. Okay, getting too far ahead of myself. So there you go. Hours and Cunningham, I put the Boolean in there myself rather than have the advanced search do that for me. Either or, it's going to find results for you so you can get to what you need to serve the patrons a lot quicker. Okay, so let me give you really quickly the option as well. If you need to print this list for a patron or for one of your staff members, always within the Symphony web browser, there is a print screen option, and it will literally grab everything on that screen and it will print what's on that particular list that you've pulled up. I'll let you know that the file and print screen is available on any screen. It will grab whatever information is on the screen and it will send it to that other browser window to print. So that's how that works throughout the system with the print screen option. Okay, so I do have ways to get the bibliographic record into this system. I will let you know that we have 4 different ways that you could actually add titles to the system. So those titles I was searching earlier with doing my Brown search or my Tchaikovsky search, all of those can be brought in batch. And some libraries, they'll bring that in through a vendor like Baker and Taylor through the process of downloading that cart from Baker and Taylor. Or it maybe Midwest, that happens as well. The other ways that we have is a smart port option, which is a direct connection to another database. And it could be a database connection that you've created between you and a local library, and that's possible. And they don't have to be a Symphony library. They can be a Sierra library. They can be Polaris. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the connection information, you can connect to other libraries. And deliver right out of the box, we deliver the Library of Congress. The OCLC is, of course, if you have that subscription, because that's going to have an authorization key every time you go to that particular one there. If you use OCLC connection client, whether it's the web client or the actual client, there is a way to connect to the Symphony system by doing a search here as well. So you can log in and then you can perform a search like this, and whatever you have as a result, which I brought this one in, this was an example I brought in the other day to overlay an existing bibliographic record. The OCLC client has an export option that will allow you to, if I go into this title here, you'll see that I have an E with an arrow there, the action export. That will actually push that over to the Symphony system for you. And it can either create record, a brand new record, bibliographic record, or it can overlay an existing one that you have in the system. So it works seamlessly between the two, that you can have connection there, or you can connect through the Symphony system. So it's the same concept. It's connecting to that server and pulling over the records, but one of them is doing it natively inside Symphony. The other one is just using that OCLC client. And of course, the fourth way, so you've got reports, which do it in batch. You've got the two copy cataloging methods, but then when push comes to shove and if you need to do your own adding of the title line by line, mark tag by mark tag, you can select what format you need to catalog, whether it's a music format, mixed material, or visual material, and then you can have open that screen that will allow you to fill in all the mark data. These fields at the top, these are the fixed fields, and they're open so that you can easily fill them in rather than use a tag to fill it in with the codes there. But when I right click on these fields, you'll notice that all of these have the Mark 21 standards. So the add title feature is incorporating all those Mark 21 standards and the RDA tools as well. So if I go to my 336 tag, it's going to have that controlled vocabulary for the RDA tags in there. So that's how that works. 4 different ways: batch, 2 different copy methods, or when push comes to shove, you do it manually, maybe for a local author, for instance, when you just can't find that record anywhere. So those are the 4 different ways. Now, when you want to add copies, we can give this, again, different libraries do different things. So perhaps you let your branches add copies. That's fine. We have a tool that will allow them to do that. We can prevent branches from adding copies to other locations. If you prefer, the people I talked to yesterday, they are totally centralized. All they do is let the central library take care of the cataloging and they send it off to the branches. Either way, you have the ability to allow people to add copies to existing titles. All right, so I'm just going to give you an example of a title it's got 72 results, but the one I'm looking for is by Lori Halls Anderson here. So there's an audiobook here, and what I could have done is I could have done this and Anderson, done a general search, and it would have found the 2 that I wanted to find here. So this is a young adult fiction, and I'm going to add a new copy to not only the main library, my main location, I'm going to add another copy to a different branch. So after doing that search, you click to modify, and it will put you into the copy that exists right now, and all that information is there. And you've got 2 buttons at the bottom. Now, if you notice, our structure is very different from yours. Most ILS systems that I've worked with, either here at this company or as a circulation person or a reference person in libraries long ago, there's usually a bibliographic record and then an item record, and everything is held within those 2 different records. We have something kind of strange with the call number record is separated, and therefore your library really is connected at that call number, and then the item is attached to it. So adding a call number means adding either another volume if it was a multi-volume set, or it's most likely going to be for times when you add it to a different library. So I'll walk through that in just a moment. The other thing you'll notice too is I have add items. So that's what I'm going to do right now is add an additional copy number 2. Do you see the little dash under the I? That's a shortcut key. This is especially for the catalogers, technical services people who like to stay away from the mouse. You can move through this interface with those function keys, and then with the hotkeys here, I can use the Alt key and that letter I, and it will create for me a brand new item. And all I have to do is fill in the information then. So I don't have a barcode scanner, but I'll try filling in a unique ID, which is a barcode. This is a book. It is a juvenile fiction book, so I've done tabbing. I didn't even click on the mouse yet. I will type in JUVF for juvenile fiction. I'm not sure. I don't know if this is a mystery or not, so I might just blank that out. I'll use the mouse for that to blank that out. But then I can go over, this is a juvenile, and then I can change the price here as well, whatever that may be. And then I just hit the enter key and it will save that record for me. And it's done. It's finished there. So that's how that works to add a copy. Now, what I could have done was I could have, to help myself out a bit, if I'm going to be cataloging several juvenile materials, what I can do is I can set properties in the background to help me with that. So I can have the property set so that the item category is blank, that the item category 2 is juvenile. Let's see, this is also not a fiction book, but a juvenile fiction book. So by setting those properties there like that, when I close this out and open this up again, I'll show you the same example that I just did, adding another copy. But now when I add a copy, those 2 fields there and this field, item category 2, are in place. So I add, oops, I've clicked twice there. So let me put in my barcode. And then all I have to do is I could have changed my price there too in the properties and click OK. And I've created copy 3. So that's how that works. And then to create that copy for a different library, I use the add call number button. And then I can choose, for instance, my South library. There's a whole list of libraries in my system here, but I'll choose to use the South library. And then I also choose to use a different type of, I'm so used to typing my own name there, Anderson, there we go. So we've got that we can do.
Hi, Andrea. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I thought your screen froze for a second, but I think you're all good. So you're in an item record right now in the item ID field. Is that what we're supposed to be seeing? Okay.
Yes.
I think we're good.
It blipped for a second there, I think.
All right. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Good, no problem. So all those fields that I filled into those defaults, they fall in line with this item now. So there's nothing I have to do except maybe go through and change that price, which I could have done again in the defaults. So that's it. That's creating another copy for a different branch, is that they are at the volume level or the call number level instead of the library's not going to be, it's held within the item as well, but it's recognized by the system at the call number level. And that means different libraries can have different call numbers. The volumes are also held there. So multi-volumes will have volume 1 and volume 2 in this field instead of in the item record. So I know that is a little bit different than what most people experience. Are there any questions about that? Okay. With the, I don't know how you print labels, but we do have a built-in label designer. You'll see that at the left here. And all this does is it allows you to use whatever kind of spine label, or if you use a pocket label as well, it'll allow you to configure that label and how you want it to print and the font that you want to use for the print. And this is just a one label at a time. This is one of those that it rolls through and prints one label. So what I do is I define the page, which is very small, and the place where the label sets, which is basically the same as the page. And then I define the label. And this darker space here is that label set, where it's setting. And then the lines within that, the box, is where it's going to print. And then I can also configure this to print, and I can say after a period, it's going to do a space, or after a number, it's alphanumeric, it's going to do a space. I have all that's possible for me to configure, so that when you do want to print a label in what we just saw here, I can go to my helper. That's what these are called at the top, helpers. I can go to my helper and I can view that label. I can modify it on the spot like that. Apparently that's a really long name for that small label. So what I might do is I might just remove that. It looks kind of strange. So I'll just leave it like that. And then I can print that out. The other thing that I can do as well is if I want to print all 3 of these labels here, I can just click on that call number and then click my icon again to print those labels. And it only shows the one, but if you notice, I have 3 of them here. So it will print all 3 of those for me. And then if I wanted to do all 4 of them, I just highlight the title field and I click the same helper and it will print all 4 of the copies for me. So you have the ability to do an individual copy, just selecting the one, or all of them at the call number level, or all of them from the top down. So that's your different options there. And let me show you, if you don't use those rolly wheels, I have several different examples of spine labels here that I've created. Let's just use this as the default and close. So this is one where it's a sheet of labels. It's 6 across and 8 down. And I can also determine where it starts printing as well. So I just move that to the area where the labels are empty and they can start printing from that. So there are different labels, and it doesn't matter what kind of label you use. The label designer is going to help you fit that into what you use currently. Or even if you in the future, if you change a label printer, it will accommodate that as well. You'll just create a new label, and it can create labels for all different kinds of things. So if you have different labels for your serials compared to just your regular fiction books, there's plenty of options for you to create multiple. And as you just saw, I can switch out when I need to for those materials. Okay. All right. So if you want to know about the modification of these different records here, there is a way to do, rather than one at a time, there is a way to put a group of items together rather than what I'll show you here. Let me do an example of, I'm going to look for all of my, I call them Lucky Day. And I do that because, I call them that because, where are they at? I thought they were item type. Might be, nope. I wonder where they went. They were here. Let me look for, let me look again. J, K, nope, they're not there. That is weird. Okay, I'm going to just do, I'm going to do that example again of this one. So if let's say that we had a new book and we needed it to change from a new book type to a regular book, I would have to go in individually one by one and make the selections here like that and go through and use my drop down. There is a way to do a group modification of items. And this happens to be one of my favorites because having worked with the new books before, I did have to go into each record individually as a circulation person and modify them one at a time. But what catalogers can do is they can group together materials. You can catalog them to be what they're supposed to, where they're supposed to go after they get done being on the new bookshelf, and then temporarily classify them as a new book or a new item. And it sits there on the shelf until you take that off. And then you just basically reset it to where it should go. And the way you can do that is with this item group editor. And you have the ability to select maybe materials at your library that you want to look for. So for instance, you may want to remove a bunch of outdated material. I'm going to give you the example of books on audio tape. Those are very outdated. Nobody uses those anymore, but I still have them as a resource here in my library. So I'm going to remove those, and I'm also going to remove them from the juvenile audiovisual collection specifically. I have the audiovisual collection for adults, but then one for juvenile. So I'm going to have that, and all of these are qualifying what is going to show up in my list. All of the juvenile audiovisual materials that are books on tape at the main library. When I click the search, I get quite a few. So I get 1,100 plus, and what I can do is I can highlight just a few of these and select them for putting them into the list below like that. Or I could have selected all 100, and then I will be able to change the status of these from the current location, which is, juvenile audiovisual there, and I can put them into a discard status. Or if you don't want to do something so drastic like that, what you could do is you could shadow these items. So rather than putting them in a withdraw or discard status, you can just shadow them, because that means the patrons won't see those books on tape, but the staff would still be able to see them. Or if you would like to change the status, you can do discard or you can do withdraw. And when I click edit items, it will edit all 100 of those items to be discard from now on. And that's how that works. So you can collect a bunch of different records using the search. Or the other option that we have is the ability to scan items into the list below here at the bottom. And that's really great for, let's say, a display case. If you want to put a few select items from different parts of the library, you want to put them on a display case, or maybe you want to do a staff picks, then all you have to do is you just scan those items into the list and it will add them, and then you can modify them all at one time. Oops, didn't type that in right. Can't talk and type at the same time. There we go. So that's that list right there that you've just scanned could be brought together, and you can create a group, and you group them together just for a time being until you're done on the display case or the staff picks area. So the groups, there's a button up here, again, another helper to help you with that group identification. So you'll see I have different groups here that I use to work with. And I've got my new items. I grouped my new items together. One of the examples I always do is the origami display. I've used this for years, so I continue to use it because it's an example that was in real life back at a library I worked at. We brought things together from different collections that had to do with the topic of origami. So we did a list real quick in the, we did a search, an item search like that. We searched for things that had the subject of origami, didn't matter what location it was, printed off that list, pulled it off the shelf, and then brought it together and scanned them in. So you'll notice that some of these are the adult nonfiction collection and some of them are juvenile. So what I can do with this is I can edit this group to temporarily be in the display area, but I want to archive them. This is really key. Archive them before editing. The system is going to remember where they first were before you modified them to, let's say, a display. So what I'll do is now I've got those two options selected. I will edit the items. They are modified. Now, if you watch at the right-hand side of the screen where I have all those current locations, you'll notice that the display changes across the board. That means that when the patron looks this up in the OPAC, that's what they're going to see. They're going to see these are on the display case. They're not in their normal location. That means they don't have to go hunting around for things that they probably can't find if you didn't have that in the OPAC. So when that display case is done, or when the new books are done and they're pulled from the shelf, rather than modify them individually one at a time, what you can do is you can go back into this group and you can click Restore Items. And it's going to ask you if you're sure. And if you are sure, we'll say yes. And they're all restored. Now watch that right-hand side again where it says Display. It puts them all back. So definitely a time saver. The ability to group things together, whether they are items that you're planning to withdraw, or maybe change locations for just a minute, collection. All of this is really good for you to be able to do this very quickly. And they're all different bibliographic records as well. Okay, so that's the item group editor. I've gone over how to do the bring in the bib records. I didn't show it, step by step, but there's different ways to bring in bib records. We have the ability to add copies. As you saw here, we have the ability to modify those copies in batch. There's also the ability to do a modification of bibliographic records in batch as well, just so that you know. And we do have authorities that are built into this as well, so that you can add authority records and create that better browse experience that I showed you in the very beginning. So we've covered quite a bit there with the cataloging. Did you have any specific cataloging questions that I didn't address that you really want to make sure I cover? Because we have still time, plenty of time. Okay. All right. We will shift over to the circulation part then. And one question I wanted to ask before, I'm going to use my circ light here. Are you all fine free, or maybe some of you are, or do you still do overdue fines by chance?
I'd say a healthy percent of us are probably, would you say over half at this point, Kristen?
Probably close.
Probably close to half.
Are fine free. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Good to know then. All right. So I will, I need to go over my circ here because I forgot to add my little tool to add patrons to the system. So we'll walk through adding a patron record. And I should also bring up the app too that will allow you to add patron records when you're not at the desk, when you're not at the circulation desk. So we'll talk about that. We have different options, and I always like to make sure and emphasize that, because sometimes after doing a lot of demonstration, people go, well, can't you just do this in one place? And yes, you can, but I want to give you your options. So this is this is the normal staff circulation that I would use when I'm at the circulation desk. But then we have something that you can put on a tablet or on your phone, and you can move away from the desk and you can interact with patrons, whether they're in the library or outside of the library. So I'm going to cover that as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can check out materials and add patrons to the system, and to do holds. All of that's going to be something I'll show you in a moment after this, but we'll concentrate here. And let's walk through the use of a patron registration tool that we have. So this is what we would use and pop open. And a couple things to start is that this window is first going to want you to identify the profile of the new patron. And this drop down will be very specific for each library. I'll tell you this, that everything that you see in a drop down pretty much can be configured for each library. And having so many branches, you will have different libraries that have different kinds of materials, for instance. So therefore, that list will be different for them if they were to, let's say, catalog a replacement copy for a book that's been damaged. Or same thing with profile. If different libraries use different profiles, their list will only display. So profiles here, it could be that they're outreach, they're homebound patrons, or that they're juvenile patrons. This profile defines not only how long their card is going to last before it expires, like if you do a year, but it also defines what they can check out, how long it checks out for, if there are any overdue fines, how much are those for each item. It does a lot of different things. It also determines what's the threshold before we say, okay, they're blocked in the system. We need to collect money from them, or we need to address some of the issues on their card. All of that is wrapped up in the profile. So I'll choose the adult profile here. I'll type in one of my numbers here, and then I'll walk through this process of adding the patron record. So it identifies the profile here again. It also identifies the library. It just defaults to the one that I'm logged into at this point. So if they want to have a home library, quote unquote, that's different than the one you're at, by all means, you can select it from the list, but it will default to the library you're logged into. This one, I only need to supply the last name and I could save this and move on to the next person. That is absolutely possible because having worked in the library, I know that I don't know what it is, but when one person wants a library card, it seems like 5 people behind them line up for one. So if you need to just very quickly get through this and address the customer service there, you can just type in the last name and you can actually save the record and move on to the next thing that you need to do. Come back later and fill in the information after that. But otherwise, we're going to go through and we're going to work through this. There is a preferred name. So if William wants to be called Bill, that preferred name would be what he sees on the overdue notices that you send, or the information that comes up on the screen will have his preferred name. So that's one thing of note there, and there's a separate field for that preferred name. The other thing to note is there's a demographics tab. And again, just like with the cataloging, I showed you I can put defaults in so that when I open up the window, it defaults to certain information. That's what this has done, is it's defaulted to, are they going to be using the internet? These categories they can be useful for helping you determine what people can and cannot do in the library, but that's also useful for understanding what type of patrons you have. So you'll notice that we did relabel this, by the way, and you can do that. So it's very, very clear what category this is addressing for your staff. But these are the 3 that we deliver, and you can create additional ones in the policies. The administrator can create as many of these as they want. And it's really easy to create that. It's just a name and a description, and you can have those show up in the dropdown. So categories are for different things. This is for grade level. I have one for the newsletter, yes or no, do they want the newsletter? And you have up to 12 of these. The thing I always recommended to people in training is that once you start using them, be consistent, because you can get good statistics out of this, but you can only get statistics as well as the information being placed into the patron records. So those categories, use them as you will. And again, they also can be very specific for each library. So if it needs to be something different for the drop down for a particular library, you can do that. The other thing I like to do, and some libraries don't collect the date of birth. I tend to like the collection of the date of birth just because they are there in the system, and you can also use that for statistical purposes. You will be able to see, what are your 20-somethings doing in the library? What is the population 65 and older doing? Well, if you have the birth date in there, you can gauge that. You can actually get that information out. So I told the library, I think a week or 2 ago, they don't use birth dates. I'm like, well, that's it. If you don't use it, you won't be able to get that kind of statistic out of the system. So again, use it if you want or don't, but it does have the birth date there to make sure that you can kind of keep track of some things there. And it also helps if you want to move, let's say, a juvenile patron over to adult. We can use that date of birth as the gauge of when to move them from they're 17 and a juvenile to 18. Now they have an adult patron card. Lots of things you can do with the date of birth. The addresses here, we have 3 of them, which is kind of commonly necessary now. My library always took the P.O. box if somebody wanted their mail there, but then the address too had to be the physical address. That's another kind of example that we can use multiple addresses here in the library. The other example is blended families. Of course, you might have a primary, but then you also have to put dad's address there as well, or whatever kind of information. But you do have 3 of them. This template, you just type in the information, and it will be, let's go through the street address here. I'll put that in at least. Gotta put space, Wild Rose. Let's see, what is it, Lane? Tab, and I'm going to do, and then I also tab, and I do 54650. Oops, didn't 54650. There we go. And then I've got that in there. And then I put the email address. When you put the email address in, that is an indication to the system that they want notifications via email as well. So that's something that you might need to add additionally. And all this information will save with the system as soon as you save it. And then you can also use it to clone this patron. So you see there's a copy option. You can clone all of this information to another person. So if you have mom and then 3 kids in line and they all want cards, then you can create mom's card and you can clone off of her the other 3 children. And all that information can remain the same. You just change the basic information like date of birth and the first name, and you're good. And that's another little feature that we have there to clone. The other thing, if necessary, there's a note field, and comments and notes are the same thing. But if you needed to add a note here to verify address, for instance, then you have that and you can add it to the account as you create the account. You also have the ability to modify a patron's information and add notes after the fact. So that happens quite a bit. I know we're in and out of the patron information, adding notes quite a bit. Now, do you have the ability now to send notices like an overdue notice through a text message?
We do. We contract with a third-party vendor.
Okay, so we have that capability built in, and you will just indicate in the system the phone number here and what types of notifications they'd like to receive via text. We incorporate a third party, but it's really all built in, and you don't have to worry. That's part of the parcel of Symphony, is that third party is used for the SMS text messages. We will simply have you, based on what you use now, we'll create a package of messages that you can use throughout the year. And then if you need additional ones or if you need fewer, we can adjust accordingly. But yes, we'll have that already developed in here, and you just enter the information within that patron's account. They have the ability as well to add it on their own in the OPAC. They can do that as well. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. My phone went off and I'm a little worried. I think that's the school for my daughter. Okay, I'm going to check the duplicate user. And that means that it searched for maybe the name, the date of birth, street address. You tell the system what you would like to check for duplicate use. Okay, and if it's not found as a duplicate in the system, and if it does, it'll actually show you which ones it found with duplicate information. You can go ahead and save that record, and then here's that clone copy information. Okay, now the in the background, so I can show you here, this is where duplication is turned on, and then these are the different fields that it checked to make sure, and I could select birth date as well, and it will check. So if somebody happens to have the same date of birth as somebody else in the system, completely unrelated, 20 years apart, it would find a match because birth date was one of those for the duplicate check, just so that you know. But all of those were used, and if anything was found duplicate, it would have given you a notification of that. Okay. So that is how that's built in the background. So once that person is in the system, they are ready to check out materials. So we've got that last person you worked with is always going to be the current one. And we've got a field here that says to allow for that last user or current user to appear. And then what we can do with the checkout options here is we have to identify the patron, first of all. That's what user ID stands for, is the barcode of the patron. And then the item ID will check out those materials with the barcode of the item. So we just tend to use the words item and user so that it just simplifies. It's kind of the broader term across the board. So I will check out to a user right now who has only a little 20-cent fine, nothing big, but he does have a hold available. And that's just a key thing for me to note as a staff person, that I need to go to the hold shelf and pull that off for him. And if I wanted to see what that hold was, I go down into this area here and it tells me I have that here. And the one that's available is actually this one here. The other 3 that he has on hold are not. And it clearly says it's unavailable. The other way I could have done this is I could have gone to this helper up here at the top, and I could have displayed this user and just gone here. Cancel, hang on, I've got to get rid of my OCLC. Sorry about that, it always does that, it times out on me. So I went to a helper at the top to display the user, and then I went to the holds tab, and here I have that information as well, right there for me to find. So there's, and again, I'm just giving you options. There's several different ways that you can get to the information. It's just depending on what you click on, that's where you'll find that. So I'll go to the hold shelf and I'll grab that item for him. And then he has a couple of other items. The other thing I can do is I can look at his current checkouts and address any kind of overdue or nearly close to being overdue. And you can resort these columns here. So if you have a person who has 30 items checked out and only 10 of them are due in the next day or two, you can resort that based on due date. So you can highlight, you can actually highlight the different items here, and then you can right click to renew them. So there is a way within this screen to go ahead and do a renewal process for them. You don't have to go to anywhere else, luckily. All right. So we've got that, and let's go ahead and start scanning out items to him. And what's happening is that it's assigning the correct due date based on his profile. Remember, I said profiles are really key for determining how long he gets to check out certain materials. So these are just books. They check out for a couple of weeks. And if I checked out a DVD to him, it would check out for only a week, because that's what my DVDs are allowed to do. They're just different circulation times. Now, sometimes you shouldn't even be circulating an item because it's not something that can be circulated. This is a reference item, and you'll notice that there is an override that appeared, which allows staff to go ahead and override, and therefore it checks out this item to the patron. But I don't normally check out things that do not leave the library, so I'll say no. However, I will tell you that because this is always a question, everyone asks about overrides. Who gets the override? What is the override? The quick answer I can give you is administrators are going to create the override codes. They are going to hand them out to the staff, depending on, if there might be circulation part-time staff, that could be a different override code than your circulation manager or public service manager, or maybe even a branch manager. Okay, the branch manager, circulation person may have totally different privileges based on their, on their position. So I will tell you that administrators determine what the code is, who gets it, and what it's going to override. So it could be that the administrator does not give you the option to override a reference item. That's very possible, but I'm not going to check this out, of course. You'll see several different kinds of overrides pop up once in a while, and depending on who you are, you may or may not be able to override it. By the way, we can tell who does the override, who types it in. It will give you a complete transaction of that item and the person who checked it out, what day, what time, and the override that was used. So we do keep track of those in the system. Okay. So I've checked out successfully those two books. I do have the option, because he does have an email address in his account, we can actually email that very quickly with just one click. The other thing, that if they don't have an email on their record, by clicking on this, it may prompt you to add one. And then you can email it very quickly just by typing in that email address. And you have a choice to just do it for the email receipt, or it may be that you want to add the email to the record permanently. You have those two options as well if they don't currently have that email in their account. The other thing that happens as well is if you don't email it, then it's susceptible to a print. And this notification here was designed in the background to print exactly what I want to have on my receipt. And then it also totals the price of the checked out items. Those are based on the item prices, the ones that you saw me put in earlier. So it just added those two prices together. And I also am announcing a friend of the library book sale. So those header and footers, those are all configurable, and they can be configured for each library too. So I canceled out, I didn't even print it, but it would have printed to my my default printer for this computer, which happens to be my LaserJet printer, but the printer could be set to default for the receipt printer. So that always goes to the receipt printer instead. Depending on where you have that terminal, you can set your default printer. Okay. Now, what if the let's ask this. Some libraries don't allow this, but libraries I've worked at, many people did not bring in their library cards. So do you allow them to show a photo ID to check out materials?
That's a sort of a library by library decision.
Okay. Okay. So given those people that do, I will show you a little option here for allowing people to give you a photo ID, and then using the information on that ID, you can search for pretty much any kind of information about that person, including you could even type in their street address and it would find them if it's the current, the one that they used in the system. So what if I want to use a combination? For instance, if it's a common last name and first name, then what you can do is you can use 2 different types of searches or more. So I'll search for the last name of Bennett, and using the Boolean, I will search for date of birth. This is definitely going to get me the person's information really quickly. Yep, right there. So I'm checking out to her. She's got all of her information is there. Everything came together just by that search. And you noticed as well, she doesn't have one of those pictures, the images. You can use the webcam to add those if you want. I usually get mine from a file because I don't have a webcam hooked up to the Symphony system for me, but the webcam can be used for that, or turn it off completely. You don't even have to have that if you don't want to. That's completely up to you. So that was the search option. Again, if you prefer that they have the library card, you'll just scan that card number in this field. Given that some people don't bring that card with them, you can do the search option as well and do that combined search to help find the person immediately. All right. So when we are done checking out, which we've gone through a lot of the checkout processes that I can think of, there's other things there. We had that bill, for instance, that comes up, and everybody will have eventually, somebody has to pay for a bill, so we'll cover that as well. But were there any checkout questions before I kind of move into the checking?
Yeah, I have a couple of them in the chat here. Jessica from Trempolo asks, you had mentioned an app, I think a staff-facing app a little while ago for doing certain tasks. Is that included with the product, or is that an additional cost?
Jim. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. Generally, we, for a new name deal, it's generally part of the base package. So, I mean, there will be a line item cost involved with it, but it's generally we include it with all our new name deals.
Okay. A second question from Jessica. Let's see. We need to have a patron's township included in their record for non-resident reimbursement. Is this something we could add? So we collect, along with the address, we collect the patron's township in a separate field. So I'm assuming we can add whatever fields we need to, really.
I find it in Wisconsin, especially, I deal with this a lot. This is an example of why how Wisconsin does the keeping track, because they have to know where the money's coming from.
Right.
And so they have all of this within a category to make sure that it's already predefined. Just the circulation person has to click on which one it is, and it will fill in, and therefore it is tracked in the system. And you can use that field for township to do whatever kind of reporting you need, but it will be in that system then.
Great. Lindsay asked, sorry if we missed this in the beginning, is there a desktop version in addition to the web version?
There is, yeah. In fact, I will just show you that really quickly. There's a desktop client. It's pretty similar. It's just not as blue in the icons, but I'll just go into my Circ login here to show you. The other option that the desktop client does is it gives you an offline function, which means that you can work in offline mode. You can check out, you can add patron records, you can renew an item. all within the offline client, and you don't have to write things down. And then when your network or your internet comes back up, you just log back in online, and it zips all those files that your transactions for the offline time right up to the server and puts that all into the system. So this is the desktop client. Looks very similar. It does the same thing. It has properties. You know, it has those function keys that I can map out there. But yeah, that's an example of the desktop client as well.
Okay, I still see the web client.
Yes, I moved back.
Oh, okay.
I moved back. Yep.
So, right, we have a question. Let's see. Can you register a patron by scanning their driver's license?
That's in the mobile app that I'm going to show.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Lindsay said that she didn't see the desktop. I don't think that.
Oh,
this
is the desktop. It looks identical to the. Oh, you know what? It's not sharing. That's why.
Yeah. Okay.
You know why? Because of the sharing type that I have.
Gotcha.
Let me see if I can. I'll show. Let me do a screen share again, and I'm going to do. How about? Okay, where's my shared window? Do you see that with the?
I just see names. The Teams
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, so I am not really good with Teams and sharing.
Fine.
How do I do screen one, right? Yes.
There it
Screen
is.
one. There we go. I am not good with Teams sometimes. I showed somebody, I have a window I have open that has bird feeder. It's a webcam bird feeder. I showed that to a bunch of Australian people the other night because I didn't know what I was doing. Well, it was dark back then, so they didn't even see, I don't think, hardly anything. Anyway, I digress. Here's the client. When you log into the workflows client, you'll notice that there is, let's see if I can get to this first screen. Just since I was talking about it, there's that operate in offline mode. So it's a really nice option. Instead of having to write the transactions down, you have the ability to go into offline mode. All right, so that's better. That'll work better if you can actually see things. Okay. Yeah, just let me know. I'll pause again after we go through the check-in. I'll pause again to make sure that you have, if you have other questions, we address them. I appreciate those questions.
That's all we have for now.
Okay. So we do have two check-in options. One of them you'll see is just the regular check-in. Then there is the check-in book drop, and it will allow you to use, we call these little diamonds gadgets. You open up the gadget, usually a gadget has a calendar in it. You can backdate to the last day that you were open, and then you can scan those items. So if you have a book drop, that'll work great. Otherwise, everything that you do can just be used with the regular check-in. And when you scan those items, certain things may pop up on the screen that you need to know about. You're used to this. There's things that happen or where they need to go. And so you'll just be aware of things that you scan might, for instance, trigger a hold. We have in the background, if you have a speaker or something that will allow sound to come out of your computer, this will do a little car horn, and it will get your attention audibly as well as visually. And this one has to make the available hold here at this library. And I know that because I'm going to show you in a hold that goes to a different branch, it tells you what branch to send it to. But when it says make hold available, it's for my patron at this library. And then when I hit the enter key, it goes away and it can automatically print a hold slip. And I'll show you where the sound comes from and the hold slip comes from in just a moment after I go through the exercises here. So that was an example, and it tells you right here in the list, it goes to holds. You can click on this and you can get some more information. You can go back into that. You can actually see the patron's information just by clicking that. Gets you a little bit of information about the person. The next thing I'll scan is not a hold, but it is something that comes up quite a bit, at least in the libraries I worked at, where they have a circulation note just to indicate. A lot of times, remember when we used to get those books with the CD-ROM in the back, you know, and nobody would bring the CD-ROM back. So we'd have a circulation note, CD-ROM missing. So this one had water damage a long time ago. I just do that so that I don't charge the patron for that damage because it's already indicated in the system that it's been damaged that way. So that was an example there. And those show up when you check out and check in. And then this one, another car horn, This one is going to a different branch, and it says to do that, to route it to a particular branch. And so I have the ability with this, I could do again another hold slip, slip it in there, or transit slip even, and put it into the item to send off to that other branch. And again, it will automatically print these slips for you. And I'll show you how that's done here with our properties. So here's all those WAV files. We kind of talked about, we laughed yesterday in a demo where I told somebody I pick up stories from people all over the place. So I heard of a director that recorded his voice and created a WAV file so that when people had a message pop up, it was his voice. And that was apparently scary. So there's that. But then you can also use the ones we deliver. The hold slips here, this is something that you can configure. So you can include all of the fields that you'd rather have, leave out the ones you don't. And again, when this is turned on and you've configured this, then what will happen is every time you go through that hold, it will print out the hold slip for you as well. And then we also have something called hold wrappers. That's for self-service holds. I don't know if any of your branches do that, but if they wrap the paper around the item and then put it on a self-service shelf, this one has the ability to allow for a maximum number of characters of the patron's ID and of the patron's name. Unlike my library, which just puts my name and library card number out there for everybody to see. They don't use Symphony. All right, so you've got those two things that are working in the background for you. So that's with the check-in. Any questions about that?
Yeah, we have one from Jeremy. What if you don't want an item to fill a hold for whatever reason?
There's always a way around it. It's not like what I know, every system kind of treats it differently. So that would be on hold, but that doesn't mean that I can't do something else with it. So for instance, if I needed to take that particular one that's supposed to go to the other branch, and if I needed to check it out to a repair user, for instance, because it's in, and I don't have a repair user, let me put it into, what's the one that I can use? I'm just going to use discard just because I know it's there. If I needed to get that out of hold and I needed to check it out, this is going to, first of all, allow me to get it out of transit. And then it's also going to allow me to override the block as well, which I'll just type that in. There is no button that says do not fill hold. So it will, with that message, it does fill the hold, but it doesn't mean I can't just undo that. I can either remove the hold, there's a way to do that, or I can check it out to something else and move it to somewhere else that it needs to be. So again, if it needs to go to repair or technical services, you could do something like that so that it kind of shifts it around. But other than that, that's really how the system is designed, is there's not a button that will say do not fill for hold or something like that.
So I have another one. Are receipts customizable for individual libraries or only system-wide?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So whatever you want. If you want to do it system-wide or if you want to do it per library, absolutely yes and yes.
So yeah, you showed us an example of, I think, hold shelf slips. Do you have any kind of templating for that? Like, can you edit the font, let's say, or edit the orientation of the text that appears on the slips?
No, it's not fancy like that to configure the font. I don't think there's, I'm trying to think if there's any kind of customization. I've asked the consulting group about doing that before, and they say it with great difficulty. I think they've not been able to come up with a great way to be able to customize those. But it will work with any receipt printer. They've never encountered that problem.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I'm going to close out all these windows because there's quite a few windows open here. Okay. The problem that might come about is if you scan a person's library card and it comes up with a bill, then you have to deal with that. This person is blocked, and you saw that I also had a delinquent status of a patron earlier, and a lot of people push back on me with that delinquent. They kind of get a little heated with me on that, and I just, it's not me, it's the system. But we do have ways to change labels, and we have ways to change messaging. So as you saw with that category, I put a label next to the category. That's the same thing here. You can make that delinquent, change it to something different it's more appealing. But blocked is really, that's pretty standard. This person is blocked because they owe too much money. There's I believe there's a $20 limit on the patron's information here that can, we can allow up to $20 and then they're blocked. So from this screen, I can investigate and I can see why he's been blocked. He's got some lost item and a processing fee, and then he also has a damaged item as well. So if I want to move right to the pay bills area, I can do that with one click. And then I have a couple of different options with this payment area. So you'll see that there's drop downs here for the payment types. There's one main one at the top, and then there are the individual ones over here. So what you can do is you can pay from the top down using this payment box here. So if he wanted to make sure that he was down below $20, he can pay $17, for instance, like that. And then you select what type of payment type that he's given you, whether it's a credit card. And we do have a way with our commerce option, we do have ways for the Symphony system to connect to a credit card magstripe reader, and then you can swipe that card and it will process the card within Symphony, but it does not retain the card number information at all. It just performs the transaction. It uses a third-party PCI compliant partner that we employ to do that. So just keep in mind that there is a way to accept credit cards directly through the Symphony system. Or you can do a forgiven, which is a waive. You can waive that fine. Or if this was a fine that was incorrectly created or bill, you can cancel it. Cancel means that it's the library's fault that we didn't, get that right. Forgiven is it's at the library's discretion, where you can create a waive. So that's one option. Or what you can do is you can say, the patron, if they push back and they say, well, I'll pay for the damaged item, but I'm not paying for that lost item, or vice versa. Let's say that he does pay for the damaged item and then also pays for the processing fee. Oops, don't want to overpay. And then do, like, for instance, a debit card. He'll pay it with a debit card, which I don't have the credit card thing put into my system. I don't have that system there because it requires transactions that are going to bank accounts, and we're not going to do that, but you kind of get the idea that you can do this. So those two he would pay for. We'll pay the bills, and I'll zero this out just so it doesn't pay that. And then he's in good standing now. I know he's delinquent. He still owes $7. That's fine. But now he has the ability to check out. And that's no problem whatsoever. Do any of your libraries refund a person if they pay for a lost material, but then they find it within a certain amount of days?
Again, that would depend on the library. I'm sure there are some.
Some that might, some that might not. Okay. And there is a way in the system. It requires that I do quite a few steps, but let me just describe it for you. And then if you need further clarification, of course, you can ask for that. But what some libraries may do, and we have this configured so that if you're a library that says, well, you paid for it, you just keep it, it's yours. Some libraries do that. Then there are some other libraries that will be in line to refund some of the money for that lost material. And what can happen is if you find that a person brings it in, you can check it in for them. And then what will happen is the system will say, oh, this is a lost item. And depending on your policies, if you allow a credit to be added to their account, what you can do is you can credit back that cost minus the overdue fines, if you do that, and it will credit the money back to their account, and they can use it further to pay additional overdue fines, or maybe you just do a cash withdrawal and give that to them. And there is a tool that will help you do that, to do a cash withdrawal. So suffice to say, we are equipped with all kinds of different tools depending on what your library does. We do encounter many libraries that they have several branches and they all do something a little differently. I've worked with them several times. All right, so that's just a description of that. Okay, any other questions about the bills that remain? All right, let's see. Let's go over to holds. Holds will be the last thing, but there's so much to talk about with holds that let's spend a little bit of time here, and then the remaining we will go over to the patron side, to the OPAC. So I've got a couple of place hold options. I'm going to describe this one. This is the basic one. Most people will use this to place a hold in the system for a patron. We're just going to use Lawrence here because he's right on the screen. And two things have to happen. You'll have to identify the patron, which is their library card number, and then you'll have to identify the item. Now, when you identify the patron, no problem. That's easy enough. You've got the card or you search them up. But what material do they want to place on hold? Most likely, I would say more than 9 times out of 10, 10 out of 10 times, you don't have the item in your hand to scan the item that he wants to place on hold, or she. So what you'll do is you'll use your item search again. That item search is the same one that we used over here earlier at the very beginning, but it's just built into this tool. So now we will search, and I'm going to do where crawdads. I'm not going to put in all of it. I'm not going to put in sing. It's just enough words, it will find what I want. And you'll have all of this information here to help me understand this is a playaway. The first one is a playaway. The second one is large print. The bottom one here is the one that most people want, which is just the hardback fiction book there. But you do have all of those that are displayed. Make sure, of course, you get the right material type for them because they get upset when you put the wrong one on hold. Personal experience. Go ahead and click place hold. And what it does is it fills in a placeholder item ID. Okay, that's just a placeholder. What it's going to do is it's going to select the best copy out of all of your branches and out of all of the copies that the branches own. It's going to select the best copy in the appropriate manner to get him the fastest filling of that hold. But this is just a placeholder to identify that this is the title he wants to place on hold right there. Now, if you were in a situation where the item is really in bad shape, and you're not going to deny the person the ability to check that out right now, but what you can do is later on you can put a hold on it for the tech services department, so when it comes back, it gets checked in. The tech services is the first one that's going to get it so that it can be fixed and then put back into circulation. That would be a copy level hold, which means that only this copy, that barcode, is the one to satisfy the hold. Otherwise, you will always typically leave this as title level for any of the copies in any of the branches. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And the rule of thumb is, and of course there are exceptions to this rule, but the rule of thumb is that whatever you can check out, you can place on hold. So things you can't check out, you will not be able to place on hold. An example of that would be a reference item, right? We saw that the reference item, you cannot circulate that. Therefore, it is not holdable. So that's how that works. There's other things, of course, that come into play. Some of you may have high demand items that only check out for a week. So it's by chance that it's there in the library. That's what I call the lucky day. It's your lucky day. You found a copy. Those check out only for a week and they don't allow holds. Well, in the background, we have a way to prevent the holds on those high priority items. So we always have ways to do this. We also have ways to cut down on the amount of routing between different libraries. You also saw, and I think this is really important for this group, considering there are so many different libraries in different places, you're covering a wide range of mileage there. So what you could do is you could group some of your libraries together and thereby fill it in a timelier way. So, and I don't know if you do this now, but what you can say to this system here, we call it demand management, is you can say, if it's my patron and my copy is here at the library, it's going to fill my patron, their hold. And then it will move to the group, which may be a geographical location, like 4 libraries within a close proximity. And if it's not needed at my library, maybe it's needed within my group. And so then the transport will happen within the group. And if there's nobody that wants it within that geographical group, then it will go into the entire system. Does that sound like something that would work, or do you have just first come, first serve right now with the holds?
At this moment, it's first come, first serve. We've dabbled with local holds first, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with group holds. That's an interesting concept. I don't know how it would fly in our system, but it's interesting nonetheless.
And it all works in the background, right? So if you grouped 5 libraries together, the system wouldn't really indicate to you that it's only going to fill within that group unless there was a hold that could be satisfied in that group. If not, then it goes and it's just whoever is next on the list, wherever they may be. So it just, and we have a lot of different libraries. I mean, we have LA County, who's almost 100 libraries. I think there are 96 libraries for bookmobiles. You know, Toronto Public in Canada is 100 libraries. They all have this demand management in place to lower the amount of transiting back and forth of materials. And I actually have a report. Let me see if I can find it. Holds by library and pickup. And this is from our Winnifox group. This is actual data. So what they have is demand management, where Berlin users, that's the number of holds that are picked up by Berlin. And then a few go out to Oshkosh. So you'll see that with the hold library, which is Menasha here, most of their holds are picked up at Menasha, and then they go out to different places. And that's the way we like to keep it, so that it's not transiting back and forth a whole lot. You can really make that a manageable effort. And so it's really up to you. A lot of libraries that I used to find were first come, first serve, moved to the demand management model. So that's just something I'll put out there for you. We also have a blanket hold, which is kind of cool, because if you have a person who's really anxious to get the new James Patterson that came out this week, you know, not the one next week, but this one, you can also put a blanket hold on a patron's record. Oh, she's blocked. Whoa, she's really blocked. But let's go ahead and go past that. This blanket hold says, I want to put all of where the crawdads sing, all the formats on hold, all of them. I don't care how I get my new title by my favorite author. I just need one copy of them. And I don't care when I get it. So we're going to say never expires. This hold is never going to expire. However, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to do a catalog search. And I'm just going to do the search again. I'm not going to use current because I want all of them up here. But what you do is you add the titles to the list below, down here at the bottom. And you go back, and I know everybody wants to hold down the control key and highlight all of them at one time. I wish that could be too, but I can't. I've got to go back one by one. So you'll see they're being added to the bottom here. So I pick the sound recording and add it to the list. Okay, got that. And then I pick the last one and add it to the list. Now what this is doing is it's putting all 4 holds on all of these at a title level. All right, so I'm going to place a blanket hold. But the great thing about this particular tool is that when one of those fills my hold, the other 3 are deleted automatically. They're removed. So blanket hold's great for the person who wants to put a hold on all the formats of their favorite author's new title. But whenever they get the one they want, all the other ones disappear automatically. It's a great thing. It's really cool. And it comes in handy with that particular example I just gave you. Okay. So now, really quickly, so I can move into the OPAC, there are tools that will help you do the paging slips. This is one example where you can just have a whole list of information here. You can resort it as you see fit, and then you can print this list. I want to show you that staff app that I was talking about. So let's go there, and I'm going to show you on the web version. So forgive me about that, but it's easier because I'd have to show you and switch. Well, shoot. What did it do? It might be a thing like that. Let me do this real quick. Yeah, that's what it was. Can't be connected. I wish I could show you on the app, which is on my iPad, but again, I'd have to log in into Teams and change out the screen and all that good stuff. I'm not going to do that. Although if this doesn't work, I mean, it may be a short trip. Oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding. I'm going to try again, not data control. What did I doing? Staff app. Let's do this one. If this doesn't work, I'm going to cry. Good. No crying here. All right, so this is my, let me get this down here so you can see this. See how it makes it the size of the screen? So this would be kind of the size of my tablet. And if I had the size of a phone, you see what happened to the menu, it disappeared like that. So depending on its size, it's totally responsive design. And what you can do is you can scan the patron's ID and, oh, he's really overdue. You can scan that ID, it gives you messages. You're able to check out additional materials to them. You can check in. You can renew user checkouts. You can do an in-house use. Now, I don't know if any of you do table books at night and you collect those and bring those to the circulation desk and scan them as used. And I know libraries do this for children's section or maybe the reference collection, but rather than take all of those back to the station, you can stay out in the stacks and you can use a Bluetooth scanner like this. And it will pair with the device, whether it's your Galaxy tablet or if it's an iPad, it will pair nicely. And then you can just use your tablet and scan those items in the stacks there. Or if you want to do an inventory, you can use that Bluetooth scanner and scan the items in that collection for inventory. The other thing it can do is create a paging slip for you, a list. I just talked to a group yesterday in Indiana. They literally do paging slips every hour. I don't know how, why, but there you go. So every time you open this list, it's different. It's always going to be different because when you take care of this list and you grab all the ones from this list here and then check them in or trap them, those items get removed from this list. Later on in the day, when you open it up again, it's a completely different list. And you could even use multiple tablets, let's say, to have some person do the audiovisual collection while somebody else does everything else. That kind of thing can happen as well. So that's a paging slip there. And this is really cool because then you just have a list. You don't have to print it. It's just there on the screen. And like I said, you can use this with a tablet or even a phone. Then there is the add user. I'll just kind of show you this so we can wrap this up here. But here's that scan driver license barcode. And this one, I know everybody wants this in the staff client, and that's something that we're working on toward getting so that you have the ability in the staff client to open it up just the same. But for the process of driver's license here, you will have to have the use of the tablet and the app. And it won't be available. I mean, it looks like it's available within your HTML version, your web version here, browser, but it doesn't work too well with the web browser. So you'll have to use the app. But you can use that Bluetooth scanner and the barcode on the back of the driver's license, and it will process the data, and it will fill in the name of the person, and it will fill in the address information down here. And of course, you have to verify that it's a current address for that to be helpful, but it will fill it all in exactly as it's embedded in the license. And all 50 states work. We have no problem with that driver's license, no matter where it is. So that's our mobile app that will do a little bit of the different functions of circulation, but this is one that you can, again, take out of the library. You can do it for outreach. You can do it for festivals, work within the library on the Wi-Fi. This is also an app that you can use offline. So you have the ability to do certain functions like checking out and checking in and adding patrons in the offline mode. And then when you go back to the library and log in, it zips that back up to the server and they're there for good. All right, so that's the mobile staff. Any questions about that?
We have a couple of questions here about the general staff interface. Jeremy wanted to know what the difference is between Circ Lite and circulation. I assume those are different roles, right?
It's
different blocks of, I guess, permissions.
Yeah, and it's depending on, I have all of them there because I'm an admin person. So I have everything there available. But when I log in as Circ, then I'm just given the one toolbar. So I'm designating certain toolbars to different people, but as an admin, I'm looking at all of them at one time. Yeah,
Right.
That's one of those things that trips you up, I understand, but I try to have everything at my fingertips there.
Right. Lisa was wondering about overdrive integration.
Mhm.
Does Symphony allow that? Do overdrive items show up in, if you conduct a search?
Yeah, and Lisa is my perfect segue person. We're going to talk about that right now. Yep.
Okay.
So we'll do that with, was there any other questions before we move to
I do have a couple more. I wanted to know, let's see, we have a couple of libraries, our largest libraries, they use the acquisitions module in Sierra, and they're dependent on electronic ordering, standing orders, things of that nature. Could you briefly touch on your acquisitions module?
Briefly, very briefly. Okay, so because this is a very intensive acquisition module, is super lots of things going on, but basically you'll have to have your funds that are in place. All right, and they can represent different libraries and different collections. And the more specific you get, the better statistics you're going to be able to pull out of the system. So you have all of that, and we roll over every year, every fiscal year, based on whatever date that is for you. You have to have the vendor orders in place as well. And those will be created and they'll stay in the system. And again, they roll over year. So you use them for each year. Then you're able to place your orders in the system. You can do them in batch, like through Baker and Taylor. You have a cart. You can export that cart and it will immediately be placed in the system. And this would be, nope, not title. Did I display order? No, I added basic order. I want to display order. There we go. This is kind of what would happen if you export that cart. It's going to pull in all of the titles that you ordered from Baker and Taylor, for instance. It's going to have all of those in there. And within each one of those, it's going to tell the system what fund you used to pay for that material and also what quantities you're going to push to the different branches that you've ordered for. So you see I have different branches will have different number of copies and the different kind of funds that are used. So all of that comes together. You will be able to invoice, and you can pull in invoices from the vendor automatically using a batch method, or we have a way for you to create invoices in that way automatically, or you can create them by hand. And I'm just trying to find one really quickly since this is out of character really quickly. There we go. So that's an example of an invoice which can be created manually, or it can be brought in through what we call electronic data interchange. So it's automated, pulling it from the invoice server of the vendor and pulling it into Symphony automatically like that. So that's very, very briefly the kind of the order processes to make sure the funds are in place, the vendors are in place. Then you can place those POs. You can modify them at any time. Once they come in, they will be received and invoiced. And then I just showed you that invoice, and all of that's kept very close track in the system of what's going on with those items. Those items that are on order display in the OPAC as on order. So all of that is there in the system. So hopefully, I know there's a lot more to that, but I don't like to, I've had the bad experience of spending so much time on acquisitions and then I find out that only 2 of the 40 libraries use it. So I didn't want to cover that too much there, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea that we can keep full control of the invoicing and acquisition process within our tools here.
Great. So Lindsay wants to make sure that Ingram works with this too.
Ingram, Midwest Tape, you know, all of those main vendors, we all incorporate the exporting of those bib records with the orders attached. And here we accommodate the invoicing for, yes, for Ingram as well. Yep.
Great. Okay, so while you're transitioning over to the user or the patron side of things, could you give a very short spiel about statistics and reports?
Sure. I did give you, if you saw here, this was a report that I put together, and it was actually a delivered report by us that I quickly just clicked and I was able to put out there for people to see and export to Excel really quickly. We do also have reports within Symphony, and those will be ones that maybe not everybody accesses, maybe they don't even need them, but we'll have the ability for you to create templates based on ones that we've delivered in these other tabs. So you'll be able to count things, you'll be able to export and import data, you'll be able to do statistics. There are ways to list materials or people, patrons, orders, invoices, serials. You can do all sorts of things. You can create labels with these. We have a print custom label report, and you can remove data. And then we also have the ability for the system to update and maintain itself in the indexes. So we call those maintenance reports. All of those are delivered. We, of course, train you on how to work with reports, but sometimes you really only need a handful. And depending on who you are, you may only get a couple of different reports. The administrators have the ability to grant ownership to certain people for that report, so that just that person is going to access the report. But yes, there's different kinds of things. If you want to report on your monthly statistics or the number of holds that were placed in the month. I showed you that holds placed by library and pickup library. There's all different kinds of options, whether it's here. We also have another reporting tool that is very good at pulling out. For instance, I have an orders dashboard or an order line list, and it will pop it into Excel really quickly if it will open up for me. There it is. It moved. There it is. Ah, my computer's flipping back and forth. There we go. So for instance, that's an order line by PO, and it lists the fund and the vendor. I have a way to pull out all kinds of information with reports, whether they're Symphony, and this one's pulled through something we call Blue Cloud Analytics. Okay.
So the end users, us, we would have access to SQL to run that against the database as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have the ability to see the SQL and to manipulate it, but I will tell you that the reports we're running, they are SQL based, so it is running in the background. But you do have access to that SQL. You won't need it. Let me just tell you that. You really won't need it, because the reports that we're putting together, these are delivered. The delivered Symphony reports don't have that SQL option. They're using something in the background called cell tools and putting those together based on whatever selections you make within these reports. So if you want to select a certain type of user or a certain type of item, you're filling in this, what I call kind of like a form, and then it will print whatever information you need. So there is no SQL access to the Symphony reports. Our Blue Cloud analytics reports, you do, but you really won't need it because of the way you design a report. It will do all the work for you. I'm just saying, I know people have that especially people from Horizon, they access SQL all the time, but there's really not a need for that within the system here. It's kind of built in.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so let's go over to the OPAC here, and this is just an example. I'm going to give you customer examples in just for the first few minutes, and then I'll show you a real live demo environment. And the only reason why I show you that is because I can show you in the My Account features what's being done there. So let me go to, for instance, this is a group of libraries that has many, of course, that you can see here. Which one do I want to pick? I want to pick Racine. Okay, so this is their what we call enterprise system. You can kind of see that in the URL. It says ENT. That's a dead giveaway. That's an enterprise system. So this enterprise system is a couple of things about it. It has the ability to create a custom experience for different libraries. So I went to Racine, but let's go back and let's pick maybe Fontana and Public. So you see how that's different? It's not quite as spectacular as the Racine. Let's do Clinton. Yeah, not as fun. But you have the ability to create kind of a custom experience based on the library. And Racine happens to have a great set of carousels that they put in the front here. And this is all designed by them, maybe sometimes with our help, but you have the ability with Enterprise to do some of your own designs, and I'll give you more examples on the way here. But the Enterprise system has a built-in editor, website editor. So it's WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. And it doesn't require a lot of knowledge for you to put it together. But some things like this, it may require us to help you with that. But they put together some nice carousels here that people can scroll through. And then when they find something they want, they can click on it and get to the catalog record in the system. Or they have buttons here. They have little ways for people to get to custom book lists, as you can see, depending on what I hover over. And then there's the actual search that you can do, which will type in the Maid, for instance. And you'll notice there's also an autocomplete that was happening. So I can use that and I can click on it to do the search for me. So the search results in here can be different for every library. And you will see when I do searches in other libraries, they are different. This library has the ebook integration automatically in the system. So you'll notice that the first two books are the ebook and the e-audiobook from Overdrive. And you'll also notice there's an availability. And that's really key for patrons to know that they have maybe a waiting list to get on to get this, the book, The Maid. And the current Maid, the newest one that's out there, it's not available at all. This one has a book format as well as the ebook. And if you want to see the copies, then you can open up that and see all the different libraries. And it looks like they're checked out or they're on hold. So it's time to get in line. So if you need to get in line for the book, you can click place hold, and it has the people type in their library card number and their PIN. And what if they forgot their PIN? Oh, bless them, they have a reset option. So rather than call the circulation desk and you have to access that information or reset it for them, they can get a reset emailed to them and they can do it themselves. So once they get in that place hold, then it will let them know through one of those reports that we just talked about. There's a hold notice report that will email out to the patron, or if they want to receive it by text message, they can do that as well. We have Text This To Me, and it is not part of those text messages I just momentarily talked about with overdue notices or hold notices. This is their charge on their standard text messaging rates. They're the ones that select what carrier they use, and then they can type in the phone number and they can get this information text to them rather than have to use the golf pencil and the scratch paper next to the station. Or if there is none, then they can just use the text this option and it will send it directly to their phone. You also have the ability to select multiple titles and then text that information to yourself, or you can email it. So you can create a little bibliography of this, and you can even add it to a list, and then you can do a certain action to it, whether it's place them all on hold or email the list to yourself. So there's those different options there, and there is a My List creation that can happen in the background. You can create as many lists as you like as a patron. Okay, that's one example. A different library will do it a different way. And in fact, what I do with Fond du Lac here is I go to their library website, and I can tell because it's just fdlpl.org. But what they've done is they've put a catalog search on the top of their screen so that patrons can do a search of their favorite book. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. I clicked the enter key. Let me go back. Sorry about that. It's gonna be a long day. There we go. All right, judges list. This is the newest one, I think, from Grisham. So this again gives me the ebook and the audiobook. I didn't mention the time before. These titles are not in the ILS. The Overdrive titles are in the cloud. They're in what we call the blue cloud. And what we do is we have a connector between Overdrive and the cloud. And then all of those titles that you subscribe to automatically get harvested and put into Enterprise. And then the great thing is that when they no longer are subscribed to, they get removed automatically. It's no work to the catalogers except for the initial setup, and then you turn on the auto sync, and it will auto sync all new titles into Enterprise, and it will remove all the older ones out without having to deal with MARC records. We do this for Hoopla, Freegal, we've got Cloud Library, BorrowBox. We have all kinds of different vendors that we use.
Hey, Andrea, I think we're going to wrap up here soon. We have about 10 minutes, and I want to make sure to get to some of our questions.
Okay, go ahead.
If that's all right with you. So we have one here from Jessica. Can we search for items available in our home library if patrons want to see all of our items on the topic, for example?
Right, and we do have that with that large group of libraries that we had here in this list. The way we can configure it is that if you want to search specifically for the Clinton branch, when you do that search, it will just show those results. We do have a larger system that will go from your branch and it will show just your branch results, but then you can click a button to say search other libraries as well, and then it will embrace the entire collection. So yes, we have ways to focus this to one branch and just those items, and then you also have the ability to broaden that search as well.
Okay, she wants to know, does that apply to the staff client as well? If she wants to conduct a search, let's say on just her items?
Yep, so if I just want to search the South branch, all of those things that have to do with cryptocurrency, then what's going to happen is that you'll see in the items that you do have the South branches located for every one of these. I'm happy to say that if you're at a library and it starts with a W, your branch is going to show up at the top in the staff client, and then it goes A to Z from there. So if you own that copy, it will be at the top, but you do see I have a library focus that I can do for that search as well, just like what I do with the Enterprise.
It looks like Jim answered another question about whether Enterprise is the standard discovery layer, if it's included, and it looks to be. I had to look away for a second, but do you have a Ferberized view at all of items in the catalog?
Yes, so I will do, let me do the judges list here. I think OC has the Ferber, but if not, I will, I'll do the one on my own system. They do not. So I'll do it on mine so that you can see computer programming. We do have it set up. We've got plenty of library examples. And if you want a list of examples, we can certainly provide those for you. Let's see if I can find one. Usually when I do this, they might have changed my list. Okay. I'm going to find for you an example of a library that does. Let me find Ferber really quickly. Ferber. There we go. So we'll do judges list again. And this library will hopefully, maybe they've turned it off. Oh, of course I'm going to have this problem. Yes, we do have it. I'm just trying to find a library that actually can show this in an example, but I may have to give you just an example and send the link to you so that you can do your own searches as well. So you can see that, because we do have those.
Oh, it is an
several.
option.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I had a couple other questions. One of them I forgot, but the other one is, do you have a children's interface at all?
We sure do. The children's interface, what would be a good one? What was my demo the other day? I had a children's interface. Was it Wells? Let me just, nope. You put me on the spot here, but I've got one here that I just did the other day. So I will try to find it really quickly here. Yep, this one has a kids OPAC. This is an icon-driven OPAC. And the way these are qualified underneath here is it's using subject and it's using the reading level. And I showed you that at the very beginning. It said item category 2. So everything that's item category 2 of juvenile and it has to do with bears gets put into this, and they have their own view. And they can click on this to see a little bit more and see where it's at, for instance. But that's going to be the kids catalog. The good news about this one is that you have the ability to add additional icons. We give you a library of icons for you to use, and you can create your own lists based on any kind of holidays or special events. So yes, we have that, and it's held for this library within the same page as everything else that people can access. But yes, we've got that. And you can actually use that in the terminal at the kids section. You could put this on the screen if you wanted as the kind of go-to place. Other questions?
How about staff curated lists that you can sort of post, and patrons can go through them?
Yep, that's kind of this here. Depending on where you want to do this, the areas of interest. These are lists that somebody designed, and if I click on it, it will take me to that specific list, in this case of large print materials. It's not just large print fiction, it's large print mystery, nonfiction, Western, the new area. So you can create those staff lists. The other thing that you can do is you can append a little code to the bibliographic record, and you can create new lists for all kinds of things. You can create staff picks. We deliver New York Times bestsellers, but as you see with this library, they do new everything. And all it takes is one report to create new book lists of all kinds of materials that you want. And you can even do that for staff picks as well. If you want to display them here, or if you want to display them as a link. Those are two good examples that people use.
So Lindsay asked, patrons can see on order forthcoming titles in the OPAC, right?
They can. We have one of the favorites I use most often is they have a button right on the front that says, did you know you can view items that we have on order? So clicking on that gives the person an entire list of those things that are on order. The acquisition module, just because the item doesn't exist yet in the order, you can still place a hold as a patron. So the items that come in and processed, those get added to the catalog, and then all the holds start sticking to them. But in the meantime, it's just kind of a placeholder here, and they can place all the titles on order on hold. Place them, yeah, on hold.
Great. All right. Some great questions so far. Jessica wants to know, can you give an example of an update you've made to the staff client or the OPAC based on user feedback?
Okay. Yes, we did. One of the things that one of our customers and many of our customers suggested is a holds management. This manage hold shelf is a quick way for me to see all of those holds that have expired and that I need to take care of. And it also allows me to right click on those and to move them into different directions. That was enhancement inspired. I will tell you that all of our enhancements are held within our support center, and there is a way for you to see the enhancement forums. Our customers vote on them, and then we choose those top voted enhancements. And you can see that we have a lot of different ones here, and you can actually put it to a certain, for instance, Symphony as an example. And these are some of the things that people have been asking for. And so you can vote on them, and we will add that to the system. So like I said, manage hold shelf is one of them. We have, trying to think of anything else that we've added. Sometimes it's just behind the scenes, the way the tool actually works. And some of our acquisitions have reported some needs, and we did that as well. For instance, you don't just receive one PO, but you may have to receive multiple. So you can put in multiple POs to receive all the lines within that, or some of the lines. So those are user-inspired enhancements that we've done within the past year or two. And we do things behind the scenes as well.
All right, so we're about at the top of the hour here. Yeah. We're going to cut you loose here. Do you have any closing remarks or anything of that nature?
Just remember that with the My Account within the, I want to go to my login here so I can show you. With that Overdrive integration that we have, whenever a person does download that digital material, it is held within My Account, and they have the option to return it. They also have the option to place the Overdrive or ebooks on hold. And we do have an online fine payment system, the same one that I told you about within Symphony. You can do that here as well. But the checkouts here, you have the ability to group family members together, and then mom or dad can see all of the kids' information in this area, the checkouts, the holds, and the fines. They do have the ability to opt into their checkout history, where the patrons only see their history, not the staff. So there's a lot of different things going on with this, but I wanted to make sure that you knew with the download of an ebook, it does show within the patrons account here. And I know we only have 1 minute, so one last question. Anything?
Lisa wanted to know about customer support and migration process, but that's probably too big of a topic to go into. Do you have any words of wisdom or anything of that nature?
I mean, the support is very good, and the enhancement form was part of that support portal. So there is a lot more in the customer support portal. The migration, I mean, it's a long question. I have a whole PowerPoint on it. We can certainly do that at another time if you want, but we do have a great third-party person to get data out, because sometimes going through your vendor or other vendors is not easy. So just know that if you want to talk to somebody else that has done a lot for me over the last years, I can certainly put you in contact with that person.
All right. Thank you, Jim and Andrea, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to spend the next few weeks talking about this, and we'll be in touch. To all the WRLSWEB members, we will meet back again at 1 o'clock for our Sierra demo, which is going to be essentially how to make the most of Sierra, the Sierra that we have. So we'll see you then. We'll see you. We'll see you at 1.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.